Forget everything you think you know about the Middle Ages. We all have this picture in our minds, right? Knights in shining armor, damsels in distress, and majestic castles. But what if I told you that the reality of medieval life was far stranger, messier, and frankly, more shocking than any fairy tale? Today, we're repealing back the layers of history to uncover 10 facts about the Middle Ages that will make you look at this era Servizio a whole new light. From bizarre medical practices to downright weird laws. Get ready to have your mind blown. Let's dive in. First up, let's talk about food. You might imagine grand feasts, but for the average person, spices were a luxury beyond reach. So how did they make time in the bland, often slightly spoiled food palatable? Wheat lots and lots of sauce. Cooks became masters of disguise, using heavily flavored sauces made from things like vinegar, verjuice, unripe grape juice, and herbs to mask the taste of meat that was past its prime. One popular sauce, called galantini, was a thick, peppery concoction made from breadcrumbs and wine. It was less about fine dining and more about survival dining. Next, a fact that will make you appreciate modern dentistry. Did you have a toothache? Forget a gentle dentist. In the Middle Ages, you'd visit the local barber shop. These jacks of all trades weren't just for haircuts. They were your go-to for bloodletting, setting broken bones, and, yes, pulling teeth. They used a terrifying tool called the dental pelican, which looked more like a pair of pliers from a horror movie. There was no anesthetic, just a strong grip and a prayer. It's no wonder people try to live with the pain for as long as possible. Now for something a bit colorful. Medieval fashion wasn't all drab, brown, and gray. In fact, people loved bright colors, but they were a status symbol. Take the color red, for example. The most vibrant red dye, called kermes, came from the dried bodies of tiny female scale insects. It took thousands of these bugs to dye a single piece of cloth, making it incredibly expensive. So, if you saw someone wearing a brilliant red tunic, you knew they were seriously wealthy. It was the original flex. Here's a weird one. Animal trials. That's right. If a pig ate a child or a swarm of locusts destroyed a crop, the animals could be put on trial. They would be arrested el dinacel and given a lawyer to defend them in a proper court of law. In one famous case, in 1474, a rooster was tried and convicted of the unnatural crime of laying an egg, which was believed to be the work of the devil. The rooster was found guilty and publicly burned. It sounds absurd, but it shows how deeply their legal and moral codes were intertwined with their spiritual beliefs. Let's talk about hygiene, or the lack thereof. While people did bathe, it wasn't a daily or even weekly affair. Public bathhouses existed, but they were often seen as dens of vice. At home, the whole family might share the same tub of hot water, with the head of the household going first, followed by the men, then the women, and finally, the children. By the time the last person got in, you can imagine the water was less than fresh. And soap, it was a harsh, libist substance, more for laundry than for people. Okay, this next fact is a real head-scratcher. Did you know that football, or a very early version of it, was so violent that kings tried to ban it? It was called mob football, and it was less of a sport and more of a riot. Entire villages would play against each other, with the goal being to get an inflated pig's bladder to a specific point, often miles away. There were virtually no rules. Punching, kicking, and trampling were all part of the game. It led to so much chaos and so many injuries that King Edward II banned it in 1314, complaining it was disturbing the peace. Now, let's illuminate the nights. Without electricity, medieval nights were incredibly dark. People relied on candles, and rush lights were the budget option. You'd soak the pith of a rush plant in leftover animal fat, let it harden, and then burn it. It gave off a smoky, smelly, and very dim light. A single rush light would only last about 20 to 30 minutes. Imagine trying to read a book or do any work by that flickering, greasy light. It gives a whole new meaning to burning the midnight oil. Here's a surprising fact about law and order. Ever heard of trial by ordeal? If a court couldn't determine guilt or innocence, they'd leave it up to God. One common method was the ordeal of hot iron. The accused had to carry a red-hot piece of iron for a set distance. Their hand was then bandaged, and if it was healing cleanly after 3 days, they were innocent. If it was infected, they were guilty. Another was the ordeal of water, where the accused was thrown into a river. If they sunk, they were innocent. If they floated, the water was rejecting them, and they were guilty. It was a terrifying, high-stakes gamble. Let's debunk a common myth. Many people think that in the Middle Ages, everyone believed the earth was flat. This is largely untrue. Educated people, from scholars to sailors, knew the earth was a sphere since the time of the ancient Greeks. They could see the curve of the horizon at sea, and observed how the stars changed as they traveled north or south. The idea that Columbus was a lone genius fighting against a flatter society is mostly a myth created in the 19th century. Finally, for our 10th fact, let's talk about time. They didn't have clocks like we do. Time was much more fluid and was marked by the sun and the church bells. The day was divided into canonical hours for prayer, like prime, terce, and vestes meant an hour wasn't always 60 minutes. In summer, the daylight hours were longer, and in winter, they were shorter. People's lives were governed by the natural rhythm of the seasons and the call to prayer, not the precise ticking of a clock. It was a completely different way of experiencing the passage of time. So there you have it. 10 shocking, strange, and fascinating facts that paint a very different picture of medieval life. It was a world of saucy disguises, bug-based fashion, rooster trials, and time that stretched and shrank with the seasons. It makes you grateful for modern dentistry and electricity, doesn't it? Which facts surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for journeying back in time with me. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more dives into the weird and wonderful parts of history. See you next time.